morning, everyone. Today's shiurim are dedicated Le'ilui Nishmas David ben Yitzchak, Shmuel Eload's great-grandfather. He should have Aliyas Neshama. We thank Shmuel, of course, with his group, Levi and Yaakov, for making these Zooms possible and making sure that the handouts are distributed. Should be a zechus and a merit for David ben Yitzchak's neshama. We are in Masechta Middos. We're beginning now Perek Daled. We mentioned yesterday there are 5 prakim in Masechta Middos. We, Baruch Hashem, for this cycle have learned 3. And we're beginning today the next to the last Perek of Masechta Middos. I want to remind everybody, excuse me, that tomorrow is Erev Shavuos. There will not be a shir. And remember to prepare an Erev Tavshilin, because Yontif is going to be Erev Shabbos going into Shabbos. Let's take a look at where we're up to in our Beis HaMikdash that we're building, diagram 3. And I'm going to switch from diagram 3 for a moment to our very first diagram, diagram 1. In diagram 1, remember our perspective is we're going from east to west. We've become accustomed to a perspective of west to east. We stand at the Kosel Maravi and we're facing the Kosel, which is west, the western wall, but we're looking east. And that's become our mental perspective. The real perspective is the reverse. You're standing on Har HaZeisim, for example, and you're looking from east to west. So remember, they built a bridge from Har HaZeisim to the eastern entrance of the Har HaBayis. This was used for the Parah Aduma, the Kohen Gadol. We learned about that. So there's this bridge that you would walk on. You would come to this entrance. The outside of this wall is Yerushalayim, the city of Yerushalayim. This wall is the wall of the Har HaBayis. You walk in from the east, and now you're in the Har HaBayis. You're not in the Beis HaMikdash, you're in the Har HaBayis. If you wanted to go into the Beis HaMikdash, we'll take a look at our diagram 3 in a moment. We went into the Ezras Nashim, which is here, 15 steps to Shar Nicanor, which is here, and then we're dealing now with this structure, the Ulam, which we learned about. The Ulam is the front of the Heichel. It is a rectangular building built in front of the Heichel. And this is the building that we're dealing with now. This is Beis HaMikdash. This is Har HaBayis. So if we go to diagram 3, diagram 3, diagram 1. This structure inside the Beis HaMikdash, which is the Ulam and the Heichal, is right here in diagram 3. This building is right here. So we've walked into the Har HaBayis through Shushan Habira or through the southern gate, however you walked in. For us, we're using an east to west perspective. You came to the thin wall, the Soreg, beyond which a guy couldn't go. You walked through the Chayil, walked up 6 steps, came into the Ezras Nashim, walked up 15 steps, went through Shar Nicanor, Ezras Yisrael, Ezras Kohanim, Mizbeach, Bein HaUlam V'la Mizbeach, between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. We learned about the 12 steps that led up to the Ulam. Here's the Ulam we learned about yesterday. You can see the Ulam is wider than the Heichel. We'll learn about that in future Mishnayos, why it was built this way. It gives it a certain look. You walked into the Ulam, and we're right here now. This is what we're going to learn about today. The entrance into the Heichal. When you enter the Heichal, on the southern wall of the Heichal, you had the menorah. On the northern wall, you had the shulchan that had the lechem hapanim. And in the center, you had the small mizbeach haketores for the incense. The outside mizbeach was for animal sacrifices. Mizbeach hachitzon, the outside mizbeach, it's outside of the heichal. The inner mizbeach for ketores is much smaller. It does need a ram, and it's inside mizbeach hapnimi. The Gemara in Bava Basra has an interesting comment about the placement of the menorah and the shulchan in the heichal. Again, if you take a look at your picture, you'll see the menorah. Okay, the menorah is against the southern wall of the heichal, and the shulchan is against the northern wall of the heichal. And the Gemara in Bava Basra Daf Chaf Hei says, "Harotza lahachkim." If you want to become smart, yadrim, you should go to the south. Harotza lahashir. If you want to become wealthy, yatzpin, you should go to the north. V'simonech. If you want to remember this rule, the Gemara says, menorah b'dorom. The menorah was on the southern wall, v'shulchan b'tzofon, and the table with the lechem hapanim was against the northern wall. But what does that mean? So many commentaries, the Gemara say, it's about Shmona Esrei. If you want your Shmona Esrei mostly dedicated to becoming smarter, acquiring more knowledge, becoming more intelligent, then turn your body slightly as you're facing east or west, depending where you are. Turn your body slightly to the south. If you want to become smarter, move your body a little to the south. And the way to remember that is menorah dorum. The menorah was on the southern side of the heichal, and the menorah represents the light of Torah. And if you want to acquire this knowledge of the light of Torah, bend your body slightly to the south. If you want to be ikar for ashiras and to use it properly, then you would turn your body slightly to the north. And to remember that rule, you remember that in the Beis Hamikdash, the shulchan, which had the lechem on it, the lechem hapanim. Lechem, of course, is a symbol of parnasa, bread. And you want to pray for parnasa, so you would turn your body slightly to the north. So the menorah was at the southern wall of the heichal, and the shulchan was against the northern wall of the heichal. But this is where we are right now for our learning today. We're right here. We've walked up the 12 steps of the ulam. We've walked into the ulam. And we already mentioned yesterday that there are two tables in the ulam, one of gold and one of shayish. So when they brought in new lechem hapanim, they would put it on the shayish. When they took out the last week's lechem hapanim on Shabbos afternoon, they would put it on the gold table. You're now entering into the heichal. And we're right here at this entrance to heichal, and we're going to learn about what this entrance looked like. For this purpose, several handouts were sent out. Diagram 31 is really for purposes of Mishnayos that we'll learn later. But I felt it would be helpful to get us to give a glimpse of what we're talking about. 12 steps into the ulam. The ulam is narrow. Okay, the ulam is only 11 amos wide. So you walked into the ulam, 11 amos later, you had this opening right here. Let me circle it. This is where we are right now. We've walked through the ulam. and we're at the entry into the Heichel. At the back of the Heichel, there's the partition which has the Kodesh Kadoshim and the Aron. But notice, this is the Heichel that we're talking about. There are corridors and chambers that encircle the entire Heichel and the Kodesh Kadoshim. These ta'im, these corridors and rooms we'll learn about later. Just want you to have a glimpse at what we're talking about. Ulam, the long rectangular building, and you've moved further in and you have Heichel. We are not talking about the corridors today. We're only talking about this piece that has the word Heichel in it. How do you get into this part of the Beis Hamikdash Heichel? Through this entryway which I have circled. That's the glimpse of what we're dealing with. Right here, the encircled entry. And now the Mishnah describes for us, on page 55 of our Masechta Middos, the Mishnah describes, Perek Revi Mishnah Aleph, Pischo Shel Heichel, the opening of the Heichel. We're not talking about the doors yet, just the opening. Gavo Eser Amos, it was 20 amos high, Verochbo Eser Amos, and the width was 10 amos. So again, you figure, as we mentioned, an amma may be a little over 2 feet. 2 feet is 24 inches, 26, 27 inches. I don't know what that is in centimeters. But 20 amos high would be over 40 feet high. Verachbo Eiser Amos, and the width of the opening is 10 amos, so it's over 20 feet. This is standard opening in the Beis Hamikdash. We learned the Mishnah early in the Masechta that all openings were 20 high and 10 wide, with one exception. Remember, we learned about the exception, and that is the opening to the Ulam. Diagram 3, the doors to the large rectangle, the Ulam, were double in size, 40 high, 20 wide, massive doors. Massive opening. There were no doors at the Ulam. Okay, going back now to diagram 31. There are no doors here. It's an opening with a curtain, 40 high, 20 wide. Massive opening to the Ulam, 40 by 20, and then when you get to this opening here of Heichel, it's half the size, 20 by 10. And that's what the Mishnah just described to us. Pischo Shel Heichel Gavo Eser Amos was 20 high, Rachbo Eser Amos, and the width was 10, a standard opening the Beis Hamikdash, 20 high, 10 wide. Va'aba delosas hayulo. The Heichel, to get into the Heichel, there were 4 doors. Shtayim b'fnim, 2 inside, u'shtayim b'chutz, and 2 outside. We'll take a look at the diagram in a moment. Shenemar, the pasuk says in Yecheskel, u'shtayim dlasos laheichel v'lakodesh. There were 2 doors to the Heichel and to the Kodesh, meaning that the Ulam in this pasuk is called Heichel, and the Heichel in this pasuk is called Kodesh, because you're getting close to the Kodesh Kadoshim. So there are 2 doors that are close to the Ulam and 2 doors that are close to the Heichel. In other words, there were 4 doors. We're going to see this in the diagram in a moment. I just want you to notice right now that the quotation, the quote for this reference that the opening to the Heichel had 4 doors is a pasuk in Yecheskel Mem Aleph. This Masechta Middos is telling us about the second Beis Hamikdash and Be'ezrat Hashem, how to build the third Beis Hamikdash b'mher v'yameinu. But it's a pasuk from Yecheskel. Yecheskel had a prophecy. We've discussed this several times. Yecheskel had a prophecy. The first Beis Hamikdash had been destroyed. The second had not been built. And Yecheskel already has a prophecy as to how the third one is going to look. And we discussed briefly why he has a vision of the third one if the second one hasn't even been built yet. Nevertheless, when they built the second Beis Hamikdash, they used certain prophecies of Yecheskel about the third Beis Hamikdash to build the second Beis Hamikdash. So since Yecheskel prophesied that to get into the Heichal there would be 4 doors, that's how they built the second Beis Hamikdash. So this is one of the several references that we have in Masechta Middos about building the second Beis Hamikdash, which are from Yecheskel, whose subject is building the third Beis Hamikdash, which teaches us that when they built the second Beis Hamikdash, as the Rambam tells us, when they built the second Beis Hamikdash, certain parts of the second Beis Hamikdash resemble the first Beis Hamikdash, and certain parts of the second Beis Hamikdash resemble the third Beis Hamikdash. So the pasuk says there are 2 doors to the Heichal, and there are 2 doors to the Kodesh. We're going to take a look at the diagram in a moment. This is the first opinion of the Mishnah. Hachitzonos, the outer doors, niftochos l'socha Pesach, they go into the opening. Lechasios ovov shel kosel, to cover up the thickness of the kosel, the thickness of the wall. We're not talking about the kosel marabi. V'hapnimis, and the inner 2 doors, niftochos l'socha bayis, they open up into the heichal. Lechasas achahad lasos, to cover up what's behind the doors. Shekol habayis tuach bezav chutz me achahad lasos, because the entire heichal was covered in gold. After the walls were built, the inside was completely covered with gold. Chutz me achad lasos, except behind the doors they didn't cover with gold. Now, what does all that mean? Take a look at diagrams 32. 32 has 3 pictures on it, and they're all diagrams based upon the first opinion in the Mishnah. First, we need to understand diagram 32a. To enter the Heichal, there were 2 doors that opened up, and then there were another 2 doors that opened up. These are the 4 doors. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is the first part of this is pretty simple math. We said that the doors of the Heichal were 10 amos wide. This is the first piece of math we need, and it's a simple piece of math. The opening is 10 amos wide. There are 2 doors. How wide is each door? 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this door is 5 amos wide, this door is 5 amos wide, this door is 5 amos wide, and this door is 5 amos wide. Okay, step 1. Step 2, the thickness of the wall all around the Heichal. Okay, let's go back to diagram 31. The Heichal is this inner room. It has the menorah, the shulchan, the small mizbeach in it. Around the room, there's a wall. The thickness of the wall is 6 amos. That is a very thick wall. That's a wall that's over 12 feet wide, 12 feet thick. That's a very thick stone wall. The inside of this wall is covered with gold. So if you're walking in the Heichal, the walls you see are gold. The thickness of the wall going all around the Heichal is 6. It's 6 amos thick on the east, 6 amos thick on the north, 6 amos thick on the south, 6 amos thick on the west. All around the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim, the thickness of the wall is 6. Okay. Now let's go back to 32a. In picture 32a, they are showing you with an arrow that the thickness of the wall is 6. This door, these 2 doors, would open up into the first chamber of the Heichal, and these doors are each 5 amos wide. Now follow me, please. they hung the first two doors 1 amma into the opening. They didn't put the doors up as where the opening was. The opening of the Heichal, you move 1 amma into that open area, and then you hang the doors. So there's 1 amma, and then a door that opens up to 5 amos. And how thick is the wall? 6. So when you open the two doors of the Heichal, what was behind the door in this little area is now covered. The area is 6. This is look at the arrow. It's 6 amos thick, the wall. You swing the door open, and this door covers 5 amos of the thickness of the wall. The first amma of the thickness of the wall, when you first would walk to the Heichal, doesn't have a door on it. So while the thickness of the wall is 6, 1 amma is just empty, and the next 5 amos, when you open the door, are covered with gold. How are they covered with gold? Because the door was covered with gold. But behind the door, they didn't put gold. Although the whole Heichal was covered with gold, they did not put gold behind these doors. Because if the doors are shut, nobody can see anything. If the doors are swung open, which they were the whole day, you couldn't do avoda unless these doors were open. You were not permitted to bring a korban unless the doors of the Heichal were open. So if the doors are closed, no avoda is being done, and no one can see inside. If the avoda is being done, the doors are open. Therefore, the doors, when they open and the doors are covered with gold, the doors covered up the back of this wall, which didn't have gold. Now, is this a cheapness that they didn't add gold? No, it's not a cheapness. The Gemara tells us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chasa al mamonim shel Yisrael. First of all, when the Jews came back from Bavel to build the second Beis Hamikdash, as we have discussed, they were poor. 43,000 some odd Jews came back, not the highest level Jews. Most of them were intermarried. They came back to build the second Beis Hamikdash. Most Jews remained in Bavel. As I always say, a situation that, since we're living today, not hard to imagine that unfortunately such a thing can happen. When Ezra and Nehemiah tell everybody to come back to build the second Beis Hamikdash, people have other things on their minds for whatever reason. So in 32a, the thickness of the wall is 6. The first two doors are 1 amma into the opening. The door swings open. And when the door swings open, it covers the last 5 amos of the thickness of the wall. And now when it's open, you cannot see that behind these doors there's no gold, because the door, which is covered with gold, is now covering the back of this wall. Why did they just put gold on the back of the door? Because when they came, they didn't have that much money. They were poor. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu chasam amonim shel Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is merciful with Jewish money. He doesn't want Jewish people to have to go into poverty. So therefore, they spent the money that they needed to buy the absolute necessary gold. But the areas that didn't necessarily need gold, because they'd be covered up by the doors, they were able not to put gold there. In Shlomo HaMelech's Beis HaMikdash, the first one, there was gold behind the doors as well. Second Beis HaMikdash, HaTorah Chas Almonim Shel Yisrael. I just want to make a quick comment about this Torah Chas Almonim Shel Yisrael. God has compassion and is merciful about Jewish money. He doesn't want Jews to become impoverished. We also learned the rule that Ein Aniyus B'Makom Ashiras. You cannot show poverty in the king's palace. And therefore, certain things were done with gold, etc. There were rules about certain things in the Beis HaMikdash, because you cannot show that you're impoverished when you're building God's palace. And on the other hand, we did certain things because we were impoverished. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says it's okay. When do you say that you must use the finest materials because it's God's palace? And when do you say notwithstanding that it's God's palace. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to become impoverished. Which rule do you say in which occasion is a sugya in the Gemara and beyond our discussion today. But these are two different rules. When you're building God's palace, you don't skimp on a penny. It must be a palace, and you put up all the gold you need to. On the other hand, as we see here, if the doors are going to cover the back of the wall, don't cover the back of the wall with gold. Save the money, because we don't want to impoverish Jews. So the first two doors swing open and cover the 5 amos behind each door. And now you come to the next two doors. The next two doors are again 5 amos each door. The opening is 10, 2 doors, 10 divided by 2 is 5. Again, each door is 5. The heichal is 20 amos wide. This is just the architecture here. The engineering here is unbelievable. The next doors are also 5 each, and they also swung open. Well, if now the heichal goes from an opening of 10 to its full width, you walk into the room through the opening, and then the room gets wider, like any other room. You walk through the door of a room, the door is a certain width, and then the room becomes wider. So now you're walking through the first two doors. The back of the first two doors in the heichal are covered with the doors. Now you open the next two doors. The next two doors now go into the actual heichal. The heichal is 20 wide. How big are the doors? 5 each. So you swing the door open and you're covering up 5 here and 5 here. Remember, the opening is 10. The width of the heichal is 20. So how much bigger is the room than the opening? Opening is 10, the room is 20. So the room is 20 amos. The opening is 10. So the room is 10 amos larger than the opening. 5 on the left side, 5 on the right side. You have a door again that's 5 amos wide. You swing the door open here. You swing the door open here. And again, the back of this wall does not have gold. Again, you save that money, because these second doors that are made of gold will swing open and cover up these two walls. So in the inner chamber here of the heichal, the first two doors cover the back of the wall. When you go in further, these two doors will cover what we would call the eastern wall of the heichal. So there was no gold here and no gold here. To further clarify the picture, we can go to 32b. 32b, you can actually see the doors swinging open. The first two doors swing open so that it covers the thickness of the wall. And the second two doors open and it covers up the 5 amos to each side of the heichal. Okay. We go to 32c, which is giving us now a reverse view. We're now taking a picture of the indoor of the heichal looking out. Right? We're now in the heichal, and we're looking out east. Our perspective is always east to west. Now we're standing in this room, and we're looking from the west to the east. And what perspective do we get? The swinging, the second two doors are opening, and they will cover the back wall, the eastern wall of the opening of the heichal. And that's the first opinion of the Mishnah. There are 4 doors. Each door is 5 amos wide. The first two doors open, and they cover the thickness of the wall. The thickness of the wall is 6. The first amma of the wall was left open. They then put the doors up. When you put the doors up, you open these 5 amma doors. The rest of it is now covered with gold. The second two doors, you're going into the room. The opening of 10 went into a room that was 20. So the opening of 10, you open the doors, 5 here, 5 here, and it covered with gold the back of the eastern wall of the Heichel, and therefore those four areas, the back of the doors, the first two doors, and the eastern wall of the Heichel were covered with gold by the doors, and you didn't have to put up gold itself. That's the first opinion of the Mishnah. Once we understand the first opinion of the Mishnah, the second opinion becomes fairly easy. It just has a slight change to it. Let's read the Mishnah, and then we'll take a look at the diagram. Basically, the second opinion of the Mishnah says that rather than having four doors, two doors to go from the Ulam to the Heichel, and then another two doors to go into the Heichel, which means we have a total of four doors. We're going to actually have a total of 8 doors, but it's 4 times 2. We've seen these kind of doors. They're like these doors that collapse. They're not accordions that go back and forth, but they collapse. And you have a picture of that in 33b. Sort of looks like a spiral notebook. So remember, each door has to be 5. The opening to the Heichel is 10. No one disagrees with that. The first opinion said the opening of the Heichel is 10, 2 doors, each door is 5. The next 2 doors, each door is 5. Reb Yehuda's opinion is that each door was actually made up of 2 doors. And they sort of spiraled one into the other. So he's going to disagree. Reb Yehuda is going to disagree with the first opinion on 3 subjects, and we'll see the 3 subjects. But this becomes the basis of his opinion, that each door was made up of 2 doors. The 2 outer doors each had 2 parts, that's 4, and the inner doors each had 2 parts, that's another 4. And they, when you open the doors, one collapsed onto the other, one folded onto the other, and therefore you have a completely different way to open the Heichel. But Rabbi Yehuda's opinion begins with this picture. Now let's read the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Yehuda says, B'socha Pesach hayu omdos. All the doors were inside the entryway. The entryway, going back to diagram 31, this is the entryway in here. Remember, the first opinion said that 2 doors opened into the entryway, and the next 2 doors opened into the Heichel. Rabbi Yehuda says there were no doors that went into the Heichel. All the doors opened into this entryway that I've circled. How do you do that? Because the doors folded, and he's going to explain now. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, B'socha Pesach hayu omdos. All the doors stood in the opening. None of the doors went into the Heichel, as the first opinion says. Uchamin itztramita hayu. It was like an itztramita. An itztramita is a double door, so to speak. No other way to say it. V'nikpolos la'achareihem, and they would fold one onto the other to the back. Elu shtei amos u'machza. Each of the fold was 2.5. You can call it an accordion if you want to call it an accordion, or a folding door. Sometimes accordion doors are the ones that you open up, they go back and forth, but they don't fold. So however you want to imagine it, we're talking about a door that would have like a spiral in it, and the doors are like this, and you're able to do this. Okay? Each of them was 2.5 amos. Everyone agrees again that the opening is 10. Everyone agrees that each door is 5. The first opinion of Mishnah is that each one is 5, period. And there are 4 doors, the outer 2 and the inner 2. Rabbi Yehuda says each door is split into 2.5. Each 2.5 is connected with sort of a spiral, and they open like this. Elu shtei amos u'machza ve'elu shtei amos u'machza. Each of them is 2.5 amos. Chatzi ama mezuzah mikan v'chatzi ama mezuzah mikan. Each of them had half of a door, a half amma doorpost on each side. Again, we'll take a look at the diagram. Shenemar, and Rabbi Yehuda also goes to Yecheskel. And he says, let's take a look at how Yecheskel described these doors. So again, we're moving to the third Beis HaMikdash to understand how to build the second Beis HaMikdash. Ushtayim delosos ledlosos. The continuation of the pasuk quoted by the first opinion says, and there are 2 doors to the doors, which Rabbi Yehuda interprets to mean that each door had itself 2 doors. Ushtayim delosos ladlotot. Shtayim musabot ledlatot, shtayim ledelas achas, 2 doors to one, ushtay dlastot lacheres, and 2 doors to another. Okay, so he sees each door as being made up of 2 doors that are connected with this spiral kind of connection. Let's take a look now at Rabbi Yehuda, who is diagram 33. This is what the door looks like. 33B. Each door is 2.5 and can fold on top of each other. Step 1. Step 2. Remember we said the thickness of the wall was 6 amos. No one disagrees with that also. So when we looked at the first opinion, 32, the diagram 32A, the diagram showed us that the thickness of the wall with the arrow is 6. No one disagrees with that either. What Rabbi Yehuda, the first opinion, what the Tanakhama, the first opinion of the Mishnah did was, he said that the first amma of the opening of the Heichel was completely open. No door there. The door was assembled after the first amma. And therefore, when you open the door, which was 5 amos, you covered up the back of this door with 5 amos. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Not only does he say each of these doors is made up of 2 doors, like a spiral, but he says that there was not an amma at the beginning of the Heichel. There was only half an amma at the beginning, and then they put up the door, and then there was another half an amma at the other end, as you're moving west, at the other end of the opening of the Heichel. So there was a half an amma at the beginning of the opening to the Heichel, which had no door to it. At the back end of the opening, there was a half an amma that had no door to it. The first opinion said that as you enter the opening, there was a full amma that didn't have any door to it. Rabbi Yehuda is splitting that amma. He's saying it was only half an amma at the beginning and half an amma at the end of the opening. And between the half at the beginning and the half at the end were these doors. So now let's take a look at 33A. This is the ulam. Didn't come out very dark, but this is the ulam. You're entering now the Heichel. Here, he's showing you in the picture, courtesy of Siyata Dishmaya Mishnayos, only half an amma. In contradistinction to Rabbi Yehuda, in contradistinction to the first opinion, that there was a whole amma here and nothing blank here. Rabbi Yehuda splits that 1 amma and says half an amma open here, half an amma open here. And now you have these doors. This door is 5. This door is 5. That's fine. But each door is 2.5, connected to 2.5. 2.5 connected to 2.5. 2.5 connected to 2.5. 2.5 connected to 2.5. Now what happened according to Rabbi Yehuda? You open this door and it folded back into a 2.5, right? The 5 became 2.5. So you open the door and now 2.5 of the wall is covered. You took this one and opened it to the inside. Remember, the first opinion said that the second doors opened to the inside of the heichal, and each door was 5. So the second doors opened into the heichal. Rabbi Yehuda says no doors opened into the heichal. These doors also folded inside this opening. So this door of 5 folded into 2.5 against the wall. This door of 2.5 folded, this door of 5 folded into 2.5 and covered this wall, which means this wall is now covered 5, but the thickness of the wall is 6. So there's a half an amma open here, a half an amma open here, and the 2 folding doors now covered 5. But no door swung into the heichal. So no door swung in to the heichal up here. Nothing swung into here. These doors swung into this opening. The inner door swung backwards into this opening. And that's how you have 5 of the wall covered. 2.5 after the door folded, 2.5 after the door folded, the same on this side. So whereas the first opinion of the Mishnah said each door is 5, the first set of doors opened into here. The second set of doors swung into the heichal. Rabbi Yehuda says each door is 5, but it is a spiral collapsible door of 2.5 each. You collapsed it in 2.5. This door, the inner doors, did not go into the heichal. They collapsed backwards into the opening. Another 2.5. 2.5 and 2.5 is 5. Half an amma was left blank at the beginning. Half an amma was left blank at the end. Again, you didn't need gold behind this area because the area of 5 was now covered. However, remember the first opinion of the Mishnah said that these doors swung in. They swung in. And therefore the back here did not need gold because the doors would cover it. That was the first opinion of the Mishnah. The first opinion of the Mishnah said that there are 2 areas that are pre-covered, that are not covered with gold. That is the thickness of this wall because the doors covered it. And Rabbi Yehuda agrees with that, except the Tana Kama says there was a 5 amma door that covered it. And Rabbi Yehuda says that there were 2.5 amma doors that covered it. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the door swung in, and this was completely exposed in the heichal. Therefore, this needed gold here. The Tana Kama says they didn't need gold here either because the doors, the second doors, did not swing in. The second set of doors swung into the heichal and covered this area. And that's the Mishnah describing how these doors work to get into the heichal. I'm emphasizing again, as I mentioned, that avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. We'll go back to diagram 3, the ulam, and we learned about this today, this opening right here into the heichal. The ulam was an opening of 40 by 20, massive, the double size of any other opening. It did not have doors, it had a curtain. The heichal had half-size doors, the common door, 20 by 10, and it actually had 4 doors to actually get into the heichal. 2 doors and another 2 doors. The first two doors swung into this opening, and the next two doors, according to the first opinion, swung into the Heichel and covered the inside wall. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, the first two doors swung in, and the second two doors swung backwards into the opening, and again covered the opening, but no door swung in to the Heichel. I want to emphasize again that you couldn't do avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. The Mizbeach is here. The Mizbeach is further east. We're going west. No avoda can be done in the Beis Hamikdash unless the doors of the Heichel are open. If the doors are closed and avoda is done, the avoda is possible. And the Mishnah tells us in Masechta Middos, Perek Gimel, Lo hayashochet hashochet ad sheshomea kol shar hagodol sheniftach. The person, the Kohen, who was given the duty for that day to shech the morning carbon tamid, was not permitted to shech the carbon tamid until he heard the noise of the doors of the Heichel opening, which he can hear. He's going to shech the carbon in this area that we learned about, the Beis HaMitbachayim. He's here, and he's not going to actually shech this carbon until he hears these doors of the Heichel opening. And before they open the doors of the Heichel every day, the Mishnah tells us in Sukkah that every day, Hayutokin Shalosh L'Psicha Sha'arim, they blew 3 shofar blasts, and that would be the message, it's time to open the doors. So there'll be 3 shofar blasts each morning, including on Shabbos, and then they would open the doors, including the doors of the Heichel. 3 shofar blasts, open all the doors, including the doors of the Heichel. The Kohen, who is getting ready to shech the korban tamid of that day, he heard the shofar, but he still waited to hear the doors of the Heichel open. Once the doors of the Heichel open, he's allowed to shech the korban. If he shechts the korban before the doors open, the korban is possible. So that's Perek Daled, Mishnah Aleph. And then Mishnah Beis will continue describing the Heichel for us. And we're going to get into a discussion about diagram 31, all these corridors and chambers in the corridors that were around the Heichel and the Kodesh Kadoshim. You see there's corridors, and in these corridors there are rooms. This, however, is the Heichel. It's this inner room. Shulchan, menorah, mizbeach haktoris are in this Heichel. Door to the Heichel. This is the Ulam. We walked out the Ulam here. There will be 12 steps. Here there would be the Mizbeach. Again, let's review it. Ulvavi Mishkanev. Now let's keep this with us in our hearts. We go from the east, walking down Har HaZeisim. We come to the Shushan Habira gate. We enter Har HaBayis. We enter the Soreg with signs that say Gentiles may not enter. We walk up 6 steps. We walk up 12 steps. We're in the Ezras Nashim. We walk up 15 steps. We're at Shar Nicanor. We walk through Shar Nicanor. We're at the Ezras Yisrael. If you're permitted to, you can continue to the Ezras Kohanim. And then we have the outer Mizbeach. And then we have 22 amos between the Mizbeach and the Ulam, which includes 12 steps. So to get from the Har HaBayis to the Ezras Nashim, 12 steps. To get into the Azorah through Shar Nicanor, 15 steps. To get into the Ulam and Heichel, 12 steps. You have the Ulam, huge door, 40 by 20, huge opening, 40 by 20, no doors, curtain. Heichel opening, 2 sets of doors, 20 by 10. either, according to the first opinion, the doors opened up to the inside. The first set of doors opened to the inside. The second set of doors also opened to the inside, and this time to the inside of Heichel. The second opinion for Rabbi Yehuda, the first two doors folded into this opening, and the second two doors folded backwards into this opening. And this is now our understanding of the opening of the Heichel. And each day, Baruch Hashem, we're getting closer and closer and closer to Kodesh Kodashim and understanding the whole Beis HaMikdash.